Quick question. Are you a student? Because if you are, I need you to listen to this episode real quick and stick with me until the end because this is just short and sweet, but it's going to bring you a lot of value. Let's go. As a student, you want to study what actually interests you the most, not what you need to do to pass for your grades. You need to study what actually interests you a lot because if it interests you, you will study more about it. I remember my grades in high school, and most of my grades in high school that were high were subjects that I really like. And those subjects that I really didn't like, it averaged really low because the interest wasn't there for me. Therefore, the subjects that I had, a lot of interest in were very high. And those are things that I'm able to use now. Like English subjects were one of my highest subjects back then. But when it came to Filipino, I was just average, especially math. Especially math. That was horrible for me. I think I had 1 year wherein I actually failed math as a whole, as a subject. And I still remember that. Why? Because it wasn't really of interest for me. But then after graduating, I finally knew why math was important for me. It's because it teaches you patience in solving problems. Numbers are not going to solve any of the regular problems. But if you are patient and you have a system in place and you follow that system that you have for yourself, then you can solve problems. That was the relationship of math for me during high school and even in college. Again, you don't want to care about what others think of you. Think for yourself. Don't think about what others think about you. You know, that feeling in high school wherein you had a zit or a pimple and you were worried about what others might think about you because of the pimple that you had. Well, guess what? They also have zits and they also have other problems besides those. Your classmates are also worried about their own problems. They're not worried about your problems. So worry about yourself and think for yourself. Don't think about others. Next thing is that your intelligence is not determined by your examination grades, like how high your grades are or how low your grades. It doesn't make you dumb if your grades are failing. Most of my classmates, I remember in high school and in college, especially in high school, those who had low grades are the ones that actually have thriving and very successful businesses that I know of today. And I don't want to say the opposite for those with the high grades. But I'm just saying that most of them that I know of now are doing really great in terms of their own business. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. By your willingness to learn, your ability to think and solve problems, that's one of very high importance. And always remember that. Don't forget that part. And there's a thing such as there's academic wise, or those are good in books and everything in data, and there's someone that's called street smart. Nothing wrong with either, but those two things are something you can both learn at the same time. Don't just focus on one. Be both. At this stage, as a student, you want to embrace anything that's uncertain. You want to embrace uncertainty. Why? Because you're not afraid to ask questions. As a student, your role is to ask as many questions as you can because things at this point in time for you is uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty for you and you want to ask as many questions as you can so that uncertainty goes lower and lower and lower. And you know what? It's okay to say, I don't know, instead of saying, oh yeah, I know that. It's okay to say, I do not know. But you know what comes after that? I'll find out. If you don't know, that's okay. But your role now here, if you don't know and it's important for you, find out what it means. If you don't know a word that was given by your teacher, find out what it means or ask them what it means. And it's okay to say, I need help. I need help. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions because they're afraid of asking help because they feel that they ask help, they might get rejected. Or, some other thoughts and feelings that, you might seem like you're dumb, but you're not. Everyone else is trying to figure it out. Even if after you graduate school, you're still gonna figure it out. Heck, I'm 40. I'm still trying to figure out everything that I want to do in life. Don't think that you have figured it out. No one's got it figured out. My parents, they haven't figured it out yet. My mom's 72. She hasn't figured out life yet. Everyone has not figured things out yet. And humility is where it comes in now for this one because it's important for your growth. Humility, having that humility to ask questions, ask other people for help and assistance in asking them questions means that you have that high level of humility in you. You want to work hard as much as you want on the things that you like to do the best and the most. So don't think about what you want to be. Instead, you want to focus on things that you want to do. Focus on things that you want to do instead of things that you want to be. At this point in time, you don't know what you want to be yet. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a dentist. Up until third year high school, I said, I want to be a dentist. Guess what? I took something else. You don't know what you want yet. That is for sure. Even if you think you know what you want yet, when you go to the real world, guess what? Life's going to throw something different at you, a curveball, and you don't know know that it's what you actually wanted. You learn by understanding, not by memorizing. I remember back then in history class that I had to remember dates and time wherein someone was killed, someone died, or pack was written out of our history. And okay, that's fine. You memorize things, you answer the questions in school, that's fine. But the learning comes from understanding why those things actually happened, like in history, in math, in science, all those things. So you learn more by understanding why it's being taught, instead of trying to memorize everything. Instead of memorizing like the periodic chart, remember that the elements? Instead of memorizing them, know what it serves. Each one serves a purpose. Instead of memorizing the letters, learn instead what their purpose is. See, there's two types of learning. One is either memorizing and the other one is understanding. And I bet understanding more is better than memorizing, because if you memorize it, guess what? It's going to be a lot shorter in terms of your memory instead of understanding what it does. And here's another thing. You want to solve every problem that has been solved already. You know, like problem solving is one thing you need to solve, because if it's been solved before, you too can solve it. It's like if anyone has done it, so can you. That's the lesson for that one. With what I do now with marketing and in sales, one important lesson that I learned in school was that what you cannot create, you cannot understand, or you don't understand. So you don't understand things that you can create. And if you can't explain it easily to a 12-year-old, then you don't know shit. If you think that you can't explain something that you do because you think it's complicated to a 12-year-old, well, guess what? You can't explain it to a layman, a normal person. You don't understand things if you cannot explain it properly. And if you can't explain it properly, how are people going to believe you? So again, it's important that if you don't understand, it will be hard for you to create. Going back to my other message for you is that no one has it figured out. No one has figured out what life is all about, and it doesn't matter. It's not important. Explore the world. Treat everything as something like brand new for you instead of something that's old. And nearly everything is really interesting if you go into things deeply enough and have a more deep understanding. You know that feeling that when you were a kid, everything that you saw, you wanted to ask how it's made. I remember my first question to my father was, how do you make glass? That was one of the earliest questions I asked that I still remember to this day. You know, me and my dad were commuting and I asked my dad, how do you make glass? And he looked at me like the 5-year-old in me, looking at me. He doesn't actually know. And that was one of the first times that he actually had to buy encyclopedia for me, because I'm at that age wherein I'm already asking questions. Because even him, at age what? Probably about mid-30s during that time, I think. And he doesn't know how glass is made. And I think this was about mid-80s and such. You know, you can't just Google it. Not like today. Like you can just Google things and find how is glass made, or how do you grow this kind of tree, something like that. Nobody has everything figured out yet, and that's fine. You have your whole life to do that, so don't worry. You know that feeling that all the time you keep on telling to yourself that, you know, I could do that. You know what that means? That actually means that it's just another way of saying that you can't. Don't say that you can do that, but then you won't, because it just means that you can't. It's either you do or you don't. Two things. The weight of words will always be lesser than the amount of actions that you do. There's just no harm in doubt and being skeptical, or having, you know, that feeling of skepticism. When you're always questioning, one of the Stoic mentalities is that you're always questioning things around you. Not that you doubt it, but because you want to learn more about it. It's for the thought that there's new discoveries. I mean, it's with those thoughts that new discoveries are actually made. When you wonder and question things, that's when, like, you know, when the world was proven that it wasn't flat, people were skeptic back then, like, is it really flat? Are we going to fall off the edge if we ride that ship? You won't know until you find out. And how do you find out? You explore. It's the same when you're a student. You're exploring a lot of things that you're doing, and with that exploration come new discoveries for yourself. Last thing, not knowing is not a bad thing. They teach you in school. It's just an opportunity to learn something new. Being in school is about discovery, discovering yourself, who you are, you know, figuring things out for yourself. And it's an endless debate of being able to discover who you are or who you could actually create. So instead of trying to figure out things, why not create something instead? If you could find things that you can create on your own, wouldn't that be learning as well? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section.